Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 265 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, we're going to look at how to motivate yourself as a thoughtful leader. And in my view, self-motivation is one of the most important things we can be doing in leadership so we can show up the way we want to every day. So that's why we'll take a look at this topic right now. So self-motivation is a really important skill for leaders. We need to be able to show up at work as our best selves for the majority of the time. And if we don't, we can fall prey to these weaker moments more often. And you know the ones these are where you're tired, you're irritated, maybe you don't quite do those good leadership things that you know you should be doing. And basically, overall, I'd say you have less care factor about what's going on. So in this episode, I'm going to provide a few ideas for self-motivation so you can hopefully lead the best that you can for most of the time. And to start with, we'll look at, why does self-motivation matter so much? Well, let's talk about emotional intelligence for a little while. Now, Daniel Goleman popularized the term emotional intelligence in the 1990s, although there was a lot of research happening well before that as well, all the way back to the 1930s. So it wasn't called emotional intelligence, but Daniel Goleman popularized the concept, and now we know it as emotional intelligence. Now, self-motivation is one of his 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. And you might say, well, who cares? Well, emotional intelligence has been shown to be one of the best predictors of leadership success, and I'll leave some links in the show notes page about that as well. Show notes page for this episode, by the way, is thoughtfulleader.com/265. Now, I like to think of emotional intelligence as the ability to use emotions as information, to be aware of them, to manage yourself well in the middle of strong emotions, to be aware of emotions in other people, and then to work with these people effectively when they're experiencing strong emotions themselves. Now, it makes a lot of sense, really. When you're a scientist, you might need a high IQ to be able to do good scientific work. That is, you have to be quite intelligent. But let's say you are promoted to lead a team of scientists. All of a sudden, you're dealing with people, and people have emotions. So your ability to lead people is going to rely heavily on how you manage yourself, understand and navigate your people's emotional responses. And there's a related article I'll recommend you read as well. It'll be in the show notes page, and it's about how to manage your emotions for better leadership. So check that one out as well. Now, a big part of the leadership puzzle is being able to show up as your best self every day. That's hard, and I should know because I struggled with it for many years in leadership roles in various industries and workplaces. There's things like politics, team dynamics, bad bosses, stressful stakeholders. All of those things can have us feeling pretty low on some days. But the thing is, I think you can throw a rock in a crowded street and hit someone who will be able to tell you at least some of the characteristics of good leadership. It's everywhere, people preaching about what good leadership characteristics are. And if you look on social media, you'll see big posts about here's what leaders should be doing. And I think many of these are missing the point. It's not hard to know what good leadership is because most of us have seen it if we've looked for it. What's hard is to be able to show it each day when you're under pressure, you feel scared, you're worried, you lack confidence, or when you're struggling for one of a million other reasons. And that's why self-motivation really matters. So let's get into it. We need the thoughtful leaders in the world, like you who are listening, to be able to lead effectively more often. So here are some ideas to some things you might do to help you show up each day in a way you can be proud of. And I'll also talk about what I do as well. And the first one is to understand your personal values. And this is a bit of a foundational step. There's a prominent business school called INSEAD that include values as a core part of all their leadership programs. And they do this for a reason, because your personal values can help you to make decisions and arrange your environment so you can feel good about what you do and how you're doing it. And I've written about the importance of values before, and I've talked about it on the podcast, so I won't repeat it all here. You can read more about how to determine your own personal values in an article I'll put on the show notes page, which is called why you need to know your values in leadership. And obviously, that's also in the podcast, Lead Better by Understanding Your Core Values. So I'll put both of those on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/265. Now, just on this note, I'm also going to be developing what I'm calling a short course or a mini course on developing your own values or understanding your own values and actually using them in a practical way. So I'm going to be developing that online course, which will be a relatively short course to run you through the whole process step by step and help you understand how to use these values that you come up with in a practical way, how to test whether you've chosen the right values for you, and actually just get something out of it. Because too much, I see people write down their values or they pick values from a big list and they go, yep, that's my values, but they don't really do anything with them. And if you don't do anything with your core values, then they are pretty much useless. So I'll be releasing an online course about that probably in the next couple of months, but I'll keep you updated. So let's look at an example of values in action. And one of my personal values is dependability. And for me, this means showing up on time, delivering what I say I'm going to deliver, and taking ownership of my problems and working to solve them. And this value helps me to make decisions about what I will take on and what I won't. So I want to fulfill this value of dependability so I don't overbook myself with too much training or coaching work, right? Because that would mean that I don't have time to be prepared. I also make sure I allow time to prepare for delivering new workshops or training courses rather than working on the weekend all the time, for example. And I try to arrange most of my weeks so that there is space for rest, reflection, writing, podcasting, creating products, and relaxing. So in this way, the value of dependability helps me to hold myself accountable and prevents me becoming overburdened, because I know if I'm not dependable, I'm not happy with myself and I feel that tension. So it'll be different for all the different values you have, but your own values can do this for you too in different ways. So what you want to do is turn your personal values into practical outcomes and different ways that you work according to your values. And like I said, I'll be releasing an online course on that shortly. And just before we continue, I mentioned the rest and relaxation and reflection. I've recently released the Useful Thinking Journal, which is a digital or paper version of a reflection journal. Now, the difference with this journal is that it tries to get you to have a great balance between thinking and action. So instead of just thinking and spinning our wheels and overanalyzing, we're looking at, okay, what are we going to do about it? The journal takes you through this process. I really recommend you to get your copy, and you can go to the show notes page where I'll have a link to the Useful Thinking Journal as well, and you can read more about it, hear what other leaders have said about it who have used it already, and see if you can improve the way you lead based on setting up a regular reflection practice and really getting yourself to a nice balance between thinking and taking action, which will move you forward. So check out the journal. It's got some great feedback so far, so hopefully you can get on board with that. So check it out on the show notes page. Now, the second thing after values is to basically self-motivate, is to align your work with your energy level. So your energy levels will fluctuate at different times of the day. And you've probably come across this thing called hustle culture, which, people saying we should work harder and longer to get what we want, just get up earlier, work later. So I'm suggesting something different here. I recommend working ideally in alignment with our body's natural energy ebbs and flows. So how do you work out your energy levels? Well, sometimes it might be obvious to you. You can just go, I feel bad in the morning or bad in the afternoon or tired at lunchtime or whatever. So I'm just going to guide you through a bit of an activity, putting all of our normal work and life routines aside for 1 minute. And let's pretend you have a completely open day where you can do whatever you want with no consequences. Now, this might be better if you have a pen or a pen and paper to help you draw this out. So step 1, you want to consider these 4 types of activities. The first one is sleeping or taking a nap. Number 2 is watching TV or reading a book. 3, meeting a friend for coffee and having a chat. Or 4, exercising, playing with the kids or the dog, concentrating hard, or solving a tricky problem. And in step 2, For each of these times of the day, you're going to select which level of activity you would likely want to be doing from the ones mentioned earlier. So remember, those were sleeping, taking a nap. Number 2 was watching TV, reading a book. Number 3, meeting a friend for coffee, having a chat. Or number 4 was exercising, doing vigorous activity, concentrating, solving a tricky problem, all those sorts of things. And the times, I want you to track that at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., and midnight. And basically with this, you can draw a simple little chart which has energy being very low, low, medium, or high, and the times along the bottom, 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., and 12 a.m., midnight. Now what you want to do is put a dot at the intersection of each point and the relevant energy level that you chose for each activities. So if you chose sleeping or taking a nap at 6 a.m., then your energy level would be very low at 6 a.m. So you put a dot there. If you're watching TV or reading a book, then you go to low. Your energy level would be low. So if that was what you were doing at 3 p.m., ideally, then you would put a dot at the intersection of 3 p.m. and low on your chart. And then if you're meeting a friend for coffee, the energy level would be medium. And number 4, exercising, playing with the dog, that would be high energy level. So you might put that wherever that happens on the day for you. Remember, what we're doing is we're sort of ignoring the normal work and life routines we have, and we're just plotting an ideal day. So you'll have a chart with some dots on it. And what you want to do is basically connect the dots by drawing a gently curving line, and you'll have a chart of your energy levels, which is roughly from 6 a.m. to midnight, where your energy levels are fluctuating throughout the day. And what I'll do, I'll put a link to an article about self-motivation on the show notes page as well, so you can see these charts a bit easier. Might be a little bit easier. It's hard to do it in audio format. But that show notes page, thoughtfleeter.com/265. Essentially, all you're doing is you're plotting the times of the day versus your energy levels, and we're using some sample activities to try to work out what your energy level might be. So now that you have your energy chart, it's time to actually use it. So what you want to be doing is doing your most important work in your medium or high energy level periods. So when you're in a low energy slump, it's time to do something a little less important. So maybe some admin work or something like that. Or perhaps you should put yourself in an environment which stimulates you. So what we're trying to do here is arrange some of your work to match your natural energy level. And the match won't always be perfect or possible, but you may find you gain greater motivation by going along with your energy levels rather than fighting against them. So one example for me is I do invoicing when I'm in a slump period, because my invoicing is generally not very complicated. I don't have to concentrate that hard on it. And so I can do it when I'm at low energy, and it's something easily I can tick off my list. Whereas if I'm writing blog posts or recording podcasts or something like that, I want to be at my highest energy level, which is more in the morning. And I might do admin work and invoicing stuff in the afternoons when I'm a bit lower. The third thing we should do here is set goals to maintain your self-motivation. Now, this is a common path to self-motivation, but there are some nuances to be aware of if you're going to actually pay attention to the goals that you set. Now, firstly, I find it useful to set goals at different time horizons. So, for example, I might have a yearly set of goals, but then I'll also work on daily goals, which are much smaller in scale. And there's an article I wrote on some ideas to set up goals, and it's called Setting Team Goals, Tips for Thoughtful Leaders. So you can look at the things to consider there. I'll put that article in the show notes page as well. And then I like to consider what the consequences would be if I didn't achieve the goals. Now, if I feel a sense of dread, disappointment, failure, or regret thinking about not achieving a goal, I'll consider that to be a worthy goal that should be pursued. On the other hand, if I find I don't really care, that can be a sign that it's not the right goal for me. Now, personally, I'm quite motivated by avoiding negative outcomes, and this is something that's referred to as away from motivation. Now, for example, let's say I'm thinking of having a conversation about a team member's bad behavior. I'm not so motivated by resolving the behavior, but I'm very motivated by making sure it doesn't get worse and make the team environment even worse. Now, this is how my mind seems to work, and it's not uncommon. So think about your goals from different angles to see whether the goal is right for you. So you might think, okay, how good do I feel about actually accomplishing this goal? And then how bad would I feel if I didn't accomplish it? There's also some research that says that if you write your goals down, you'll be more likely to achieve them. And even better, write them down and tell someone else about them. And that makes them even more achievable because there's an accountability factor there. And the last thing I'll suggest to maintain your self-motivation is create a morning routine that works for you. Now, morning routines have been a big deal over the past 10 years or so, or even more now. And one of the popular books on this topic is Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning, which brought this trend into the mainstream. Now, I don't really subscribe to the idea that you need to get up at 4 a.m. and do a million different things to set you up for a good day. What I do believe is that you should ideally carve out a little me time before you start your day proper. So this might be as simple as walking the dog or having a cup of coffee, something that makes you feel good and puts a space in between waking up and getting to work. So here's what I do almost every day. Number one is I wake up at about 6:30 a.m. Number two, I do 10 minutes of meditation. Number three, I sit outside for breakfast and coffee with no sunglasses on because morning sunlight is effective for regulating your sleep patterns. I'll put some links in the show notes about that. Then I'll do something that may sound very strange, but I'll smile for 1 minute. And this is a weird thing to be doing, but there's some good evidence suggesting that this is a positive thing to do to help you feel more positive. It's almost like your face muscles in that smiling motion or smiling gesture release hormones which allow you to feel more positive. So that's something worth doing as well. Then I'll take the dog for a walk for about 15 minutes as well. So what I could do is get up about 45 minutes later, so sleep longer, and then get straight to work, and I could take coffee and breakfast with me and have that on the run. But I find this to be much more stressful, and for me, I feel unsettled going into the day, so it doesn't set me up well. But everyone's different, so they'd be keen to know what's your morning routine that will help with your self-motivation. And some of the examples of things that people often put in their morning routine include things like meditation, exercise, stretching, yoga, jogging, whatever it is, journaling as well, some people like to do, and walking outside, taking a cold shower, or listening to their favorite music. So it'd be interesting to think about, okay, what does your morning routine look like? And could you create a morning routine? It doesn't have to be complicated or extensive that helps set you up for a successful day. So self-motivation is one of your most powerful tools because if you don't feel good coming to work, it will show up in your behavior. Leaders are role models, so it's important to look and act the part as often as we can. And it's not hard to know what good leadership is, in my view, but it's hard to keep doing those things every day. Self-motivation will help you show up the way you want to, and your team and the people around you will thank you for it. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this. What do you do to maintain your motivation in your leadership role, which can be quite challenging? So let me know in the comments on the show notes page, thoughtleader.com/265. It'd be great to hear what you do and give other leaders some ideas as well when they look at that show notes page. If you haven't already and you enjoy this podcast, please leave a positive rating on your podcast app of choice. I really appreciate it. Helps me get the word out about the podcast as well. So thank you for listening to this episode. Hopefully you can get some tips from this to help you motivate yourself a little bit more and show up better every day. Keep up the thoughtful leadership, and I'll be back next time.